Here's a quote just for this episode. Most people take the limit of their vision to be the limits of the world. Arthur Schopenhauer. I'm here with two unbelievable friends, guests of the Culture Matters podcast, and we were catching up before I hit record. And I thought, we got to jump in the pool. Andrew Berman is here. His first episode was season 5, episode 55. And Paul Lucido's here. His first episode was season 1, episode 10. And if you're listening to this, we're on season 700, episode 9,999. We're here to talk about 30 Days of Thought, and we're actually going through 30 Days of Thought together. We're about to, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, someone will read the first excerpt, life lesson. But I cut you off there, Andrew. You were talking before I hit record. I thought we got to just live this.
Yeah, so we were just kind of reminiscing about how Paul and I, we just took this book and man, this book's seen better days here, but we tore through it. We went live. So rather than just kind of record something if we felt comfortable with a post, but we said, hey, listen, Paul and I both knew that we need to be out in front more for our lives, our organizations, our communities, and everything. You just need to be out there more, and we felt actually the best way to be comfortable with what we kept always saying is being uncomfortable, is just being out there and just turning it on, like turning the freaking camera on, going live, just sharing our thoughts raw, as ugly as uncomfortable as it sometimes was. It was great content, like, and it just was really and while yes, there a lot of people watched it. It was great, but I think we did it more for ourselves and for our own development, our own growth, and it felt good to dig into some of these topics and just kind of like take take the words of 30 Days of Thought and analyze them on almost like a sentence by sentence level.
Paul?
Yeah, well, I think Andrew said it all, and I want to tell you guys something that's really interesting. The whole getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Andrew, I think you and I came up with that, and we started to put it out there in the universe. I want you to know that that's all I hear from our leadership, from other people. Now, they will never admit where they may have heard it, but I will tell you, it's interesting, huh, Jay? But it's interesting how that works. But I'm sitting in the back silently going, you know what? I know where that came from because I started using it a lot, and also the preaching of the culture thing, right? But the comfortable with being uncomfortable, we actually put that as part of our podcast. I think it's in the little, we'll call it.
I was about to say it's the actual title.
It's the actual title.
There's
I
proof.
know. Over how many years ago? 2 years ago or something? I don't know.
Almost 5 years.
Has it been really, brother? Wow.
We're about to blow this up.
So yes, the whole idea behind this, when we started this, when Andrew approached me, as I've said in the past, was I've got this book. I'm going to send it to you, and you and I are going to chop away at it and do videos on it. And we took it seriously, and we did really good, and we did get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But a lot of what we did was really a matter of interpreting what you were trying to convey, at the same time keeping in mind that there is no right wrong interpretation. That's what I remember in one of the episodes. You said your book, because I kept referring to it as your book. You say your book. It is our book. I get it. But there's still a propensity to want to see if we can hit the mark. Are we even close to where you were going with that idea? Or were you just throwing something out there in the universe and saying, hey, look, let's see what comes back as a result of this quote, of this analogy. So yeah, anyway, I want you both to know that I will regularly listen to, re-listen to all those videos that we
Oh
did.
wow.
I do. I do. I do listen
Interesting.
to them. I'm just
Why?
curious to
Why?
see why, because one, it's just interesting. It helps refuel me. It rekindles me for other things that I'm thinking of doing, in personally. And then also because it just, I'm curious to see if I still have the same outlook. For example, on Life Lesson, I re-listened to the podcast Andrew and I did, and I still kind of hold to what we were saying. I still believe that to be the analogy, if you will, from our perspective. So anyway, but yeah, it's
Wow.
really, really good stuff, Jay. You really provoked thought for sure.
Now, I've gone through the book a couple times, and every time I'm a different person through it and throughout it and at the end, like after. And right
Mhm.
now, for our listeners, I've been going through again. I'm on Humans Shouldn't Be Cops, and I've been
Mhm.
procrastinating, which contradicts one of the other ones, which is procrastination is the
Procrastination.
only true death. Yeah. I've been procrastinating because I'm not quite sure how to open it up. And then I realized, oh, I just should just start like this. I just need to read it. But I'm going through it so that the audience has my take on my take
Mhm.
on the Culture Matters podcast. And I've been stuck at, as of yesterday, humans shouldn't be cops. And what happened was, instead of recording that, I did, I would say, my first ad lib. Is that the right way? Like a kind of like
Mhm.
a, you know what? I'm just going to turn the camera on and say what is on my mind.
Mm.
Right on.
And that wasn't even the plan, but I would say that was a win or a success as a student of this process myself,
Mhm.
desiring to get comfortable being uncomfortable in the spirit
Mhm.
of your mantra there. And that just happened yesterday. And the funniest thing, as I was recording, it was an intro to a lecture series I'm doing on Beyond Order, Jordan B. Peterson's second popularized book of his 12 rules. And I was introducing the 12 rules because that's what came to my mind. Okay, I'm going to do this lecture series. Let me do an episode where I introduce the 12 rules. And I'm on the second rule, and Brad runs in the hotel room after the gym and starts flexing in the camera and goes, "Who's on that? Who's on there?" I'm like, "No, it's just me talking to myself." And so he lifts up his shirt and he flexes his abs because now he has abs. Apparently, he's been working
Wow.
out. And I'm thinking, this moment, this is my real friend that everybody gets to see live, because I was opening up, because we were working, in the hotel room. Then he went to the gym before the speech, and I'm like, I got to get content done. I got to do things. I got to work, and flies in, and there was like this real moment of like, this is what it takes, you know, getting up early, working out, getting
Yeah.
in shape, whether you're about to turn 56 or you're in your 30s. Like, I'm in worse shape. Anyways, so like, I'm a student in this process, and I'm so excited to go through this series again with you guys and see what manifests from it, starting with Life Lesson.
That's interesting. That's
And now we
interesting.
have a couple listeners, so it's not just us. It's us and our team, our culture family, taking
Yeah.
this journey. I was preparing before this on Life Lessons. I was writing some thoughts of what I think today of my thought then, or how I was interpreted, and you know, being confronted with things I consider mistakes or errors, and I was like, wow, this is humbling.
Yeah. Now you
So
bring up good points, man. And
So is there a big difference from like I mean life lessons? This is a pretty simple. This to me seems like a very a simple topic, but like did you find a difference in what you have said actually when you wrote the book, when you came up with this, like as you've gone through your the time and listening to this or reading this multiple times to today? Is your outlook on life lessons that different?
Well, I would love your guys' feedback on this, but I think I see a one glaring contradiction in the first half. that I'd love to explore. I I want to say I don't believe I'm the same person as I was then. So, and every time I come back to 30 Days of Thought, I think I'm going deeper, or what it feels like to be deeper now. I guess I would need the comment section to help me. Am I getting deeper or am I getting dumber? So I guess I would need the comment. So we should probably read the excerpt, so the audience can kind of follow along. But I would say, I don't know. I need your help I don't, I don't know. Paul, do you want to read the excerpt?
Sure. I'll read it really quick. Hold on here. So this is life lesson. All right. Best way to F it all up. Argue and combat, all while defending against the haters. Think of a negative comment like a cancer. When it grows in the comment section and grows when engaged with any retort other than love, understanding, and acceptance. Not only does it grow, but it spreads negative meaning others will chime in and feed off of. That's interesting. Remember, people see life through their lens. They are the writer, producer, director, and leading role in their life's movie. You are an extra according to them, and you need to own that. These are the majority, the mice, and they will feed on self-hate because it's what they know. A mouse does not know the hunt. The mouse does not seek out the hunt, and the mouse does not seek out prey nor own their game. They do not know that language. They know gossip, and they scavenge and prey on the lion's kill, on your kill. It was Nietzsche who said, "A lion is not angered over a mouse. His relative power is too great. Defensiveness betrays weakness." Now that was the lion's quote. A mouse sees what a mouse sees, and a lion sees what a lion sees. This is the truth of life. The opposite of what we know is also true, and once we accept this truth, we can accept people and win them over eventually. This truth is that we have already won over who matters, ourselves. And then it goes further to say the opposite of what we know is also true, life lesson. So I hope I read that,
Yeah, great.
Okay. So two things I wanted to bring up. One was I wanted to acknowledge your comment prior to reading the excerpt for the analogy. And that was, maybe your lens is different now. Maybe your lens is different. At the time, the lens you were viewing things through is now grown, changed, altered in some way. So that's something to keep in mind too. But I'll tell you what I'm curious about with that quote right there. The part that I probably could have dug in deeper, because I think I went for what I felt was more obvious to me, and that was the idea of just being a better listener and understanding where people are coming from, before being so quick to retort. Don't fuel it by defending, rather embrace it. It's kind of like saying embrace the suck. I don't know if you've heard that term used.
Yeah.
So, you got to kind of embrace it and see where people are coming from. But I want you to clarify for me, maybe if you will, the lion and the mouse, where you were going with that particular part of the quote.
I should definitely take this opportunity to own, I believe it was actually Peter Sloterdijk on Nietzsche. Peter Sloterdijk is a Scandinavian philosopher, and there's these audios where he goes into different aspects of his thought. And one of the quotes in there is that I attributed to Nietzsche. I believe it's Peter Sloterdijk on Nietzsche.
Okay.
I've thought, should we change that? Should I keep it as a mistake to show how, fragile or imperfect authorship is, even, or like, to keep the theme and, the fidelity of that. Like, I'm not, this isn't dogma here, but anyway, that's a side conversation. They do not know that language. They know gossip, and they scavenge. I just want to throw this in the hat that I feel like a mouse. And I think I was writing this to have a bigger roar. That's where there's a paradox in here, because I'm like compassionate and then I'm name calling, or I'm preaching some form of like empathy and compassion, and then I'm almost like a Houthi, the Tutsi and the Hutu, they called each other the cockroaches, and then there was that genocide, and that comes to mind. I don't know. So anyway, we start calling people mice. I think bad things happen culturally, but so a lion is not angered over a mouse. His relative power is too great. Are you asking about the defensiveness betrays weakness piece? Because
Mm-hmm.
that I had a conversation once actually with Brad of is it portrays weakness? And at first I thought, did I have is that a spelling error or I misheard that quote? And I don't think I did, because at least definitely at the time when I was writing this, but when it comes to the liar journey, I would interpret defensiveness betrays weakness, because it's actually from a position of weakness or position of lack that our flourishing comes from. That there's like this underlying philosophy I'm trying to get out in that, or at least, and that's interpreted in the quote. We need defensive, or I'm sorry, we need weakness. It's so like if I'm defensive, I'll give you if I'm defensive to the comment that I consider negative or critical, I'm missing the opportunity to work on what could be weak. So it's betraying the weakness that would come before the strength.
Yeah.
And
I understand.
that's how I was interpreting that. And the quote is, I made such a big mistake with that quote, with like not even quoting the right person. I owe Peter Slaughterditch a big apology. I'm just projecting now. I'm going to send him like a bouquet or something.
So almost like you have blindness because you're not confident in that position. So let me ask you this, Jay, when you wrote that, because I feel like this is something there are. I mean, we've watched you grow over the time that we've known you, but like this is like a core thing. Like this is like the idea of taking your haters and shining a light on them, and embracing them, not feeding into the negativity. I feel like this is like one of the things that has not necessarily changed. It's like this is core Jay Doran.
What? Yeah. What you're? What's underneath
because
that?
because I think Andrew's right on that. Look, when you wrote a lot of what you have written, and I know we want to stay on topic for this particular subject, life lesson. There's some ambiguity in the writing, right? You're a very deep thinker, okay? You're a deep thinker. And so a lot of it is, for those of us reading, we're trying to sift through and decipher and make meaning of what you're saying. What might seem very straightforward to you, to some of us might be either above our head, or we just need to read it until we ingest and understand what it is you're trying to convey. But I think that that's part of who you are. That's what kind of makes you unique to me. Is I was thinking, could I sit down and write something like that? I don't know. I don't know that I could do that. I could read it and I could do my best to understand it, but I don't know if that would spill out of my mind like that. So there's a sense of appreciation from my perspective toward you, to say, wow, how the hell did you do that? And where did that come from? What was the catalyst to get you to start to think like that?
Yeah.
Andrew, am I even getting half close to your point?
Yeah, of course, yeah, 100%. But
Go
I
ahead,
mean,
go ahead.
continuing what you're saying there, Paul, I want to know, Jay, was there something? Was there like an impetus? Was there a time where you would have chased the negativity with more negativity, and then at some point said, okay, something, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to actually feed negativity with positivity and, just not hate my haters, embrace them.
But to answer your question, Paul, I think pain and suffering and being a mouse,
Interesting.
what, I don't want to move here. I don't want to get stomped here. Excuse me. The natural inclination to lean in is a part of me. I think we can reduce it in all sorts of psychological ways to my upbringing.
Sure.
There's just and in some sense, okay, well then that could I think am I going to look back on my deathbed and say, I wish I was a bit more resentful? I wish I had held on to that grudge with my former, insert. Is it business? Is it relationship? Is it family? Am I going to look back on my deathbed and say, like, where you hear that sentiment a lot of, like, no one ever sat on their deathbed and said, I wish I worked more hours.
Yeah, right.
First of all, Jacob Fugger did. Okay. He was the wealthiest man in Germany at one time. And it's actually in a biography about him. He actually did regret that he couldn't make more money. That's a separate story. But I think on the deathbed, what it really means has to do more with what I'm thinking. Because the fear of death in my view, theoretically, has a relationship with who we didn't embrace, what we didn't say, the conversations we didn't have. Our consciousness has weight to it. Our body holds the score of the resentments and the deceits and the interpersonal conflicts. And for whatever reason, my life story has unfolded where I have a proclivity to start the disagreement, to make it worse. And so I think I better finish it. So finish it will be, hey, I'm sorry. I'll own it first. I'll make the first call or I'll follow up. It's and where does that I don't want to take all the credit for that. It seems like a gift or a helpful. I mean, if you're going to start the fight, you might as well finish it.
Mm-hmm.
But that some of this is just, is it genes, is it environment, combination, is it a calling? There's a value piece. I think you guys are right. So that would be my short answer for that. It's like, it is a core component.
Yeah. I think too, and I have a little, and I do have this in me. I've always been this way since I was a kid, but I view you as a very curious person. And so being curious is good. There's an old saying, curiosity killed the cat. We all know that old saying, but there is something that comes with curiosity. You have to be careful just how far, how deep you probe into things, because there are repercussions sometimes for it. But I think what I like about you, that the reason I gravitated to you once I met you and got to know who you were, was I like the fact that you are really curious. You're not afraid to be vulnerable, even though you may have masked that a little bit in the beginning, as you alluded to here, that vulnerability or being the mouse or whatever, but that to me might be what was needed to get you to come out and do what you needed to do for you, what you felt you needed to do for your soul, to fulfill what you needed to do. Who knows? We all have different needs and different, as Andrew was saying, the impetus, whatever it is that gets us to do what we do, right? Proclivities, I can go on and on. But I think your curiosity is a big component of who you are, and you're an intelligent guy. So intelligence, curiosity, and maybe a little broken in the beginning, that's quite a combination. I read your story. you have a hell of a story. So, let's be real. That probably had a big part of it too. Everything to gain or
I think
lose. I
it
mean,
should be said.
go ahead.
I've been given a lot of love. So I think I have a responsibility to, even if it's innate, to give. And then it's like, that's a gift. I've been
Yes.
given love. So many people just lack love. So that first sentence, that think of a negative comment like a cancer.
Mhm.
When it grows in the comment section, it grows when engaged. It only takes one person in a whole comment section to make it okay. Like, it only takes one person in a business to make it okay. Somebody that can handle. Now they might get crucified. Okay, now they work somewhere else. But their example demonstrated the values.
Yeah,
So
well, yeah, I agree. I agree. And my kid always used to tell me, "Hey, Dad, simple pleasantries go a long way in life. If you just can practice some of that, you'd be surprised on how you can win people over or how you can just make things, better." Um,
Hmm.
so I don't know what this is an interesting conversation because it's all kind of stemming from the life lesson, again, the analogy of life lesson. But I'm going to kind of go toward the original reading and what I got out of it. When I read that originally, what I was getting out of it was a don't be quick to judge, don't be quick to react. Temper yourself a little bit and be a better listener. I go back to I love your line. Read to think, write to develop, listen to what is unsaid, and speak to let go. I'll always remember those four pillars. Those are really good. Those are really good. And the listen to what is unsaid piece is the hardest part. You've got to be a good listener. You've got to be a good listener. You got to really, listen to what people are saying. And, the old saying, well, trying to read between the lines. Okay, I know that's figuratively speaking, but what that means to me is they're trying to convey something to you, and you need to be able to pick to some degree have some responsibility to be able to listen and see if you could pick up on that. You could argue with that and say, well, why don't you just say what you need to say and don't talk to me in freaking cryptic, right, code. Okay, I get it. But being a good listener, picking up on micro expressions, picking up on body language, picking up on all of that is all part of listening. It's all part of it. um, Anyway, I don't even know where the
when
hell
I wrote
I don't
this,
even know where
there
the hell I
was
was
no.
going with that.
Well, when I wrote the book, or the book wrote me,
The
there
book.
was no listen to hear was unsaid. There was just there actually that came as a consequence of doing the podcast
Mm-hmm.
and actually preparing and having guests on. As Abraham Lincoln said, I don't like that man very much. Let me get to know him.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's good.
half the people on the show I don't like. Even after having them on, I definitely really didn't like them before. I had, opinions of who they were. I could easily go to a bar and just spend hours talking about who I think this person is and building relationships off of that resentment and lack of courage. So when this book came out, and some of the influences of this book, it was my wife who I married the lion, the mouse, and growing into, if I'm honest, myself, and Brad, who I've mentioned a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
and a handful of other mentors. As Abraham Lincoln said, I learn from everyone I meet. Usually, it's what not to do. Some relationships that destroyed me, and those are the influences over this process, this meditation. But I want the audience to know, and you guys, when 30 Days of Thought was being developed, I mean, it was just read to think, write to develop, speak to let go. I didn't even think about listening because wasn't something that was even in my periphery. I had never done that before.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I had never done it before. I recognized how poor of a listener I was first from doing these shows where I would be called to research someone and slow down
Yeah.
and because the purpose of the podcast to help uncover the genius for our guest. Everyone that's been listening over the years, it's been this meditation for me to become a better person, leader, advisor, etc. Like, oh my God, listening, I should add this to the mantra.
By the way, that is irony because you are like one of the best listeners. Like, I've personally have learned so much about listening, from that, and whether it's someone who you're interviewing or even your haters, there's data in there.
Yeah.
Like when someone's hating on you, like, and you said this, I don't remember when it was or where, but maybe it was a tweet or a thread or a Facebook post or on who knows where, but I remember you said something to the level of this, that your haters won't tell you things your fans, your haters will tell you things your fans and friends won't.
Right.
Your fans and friends are going to be complimentary, and just they're your cheerleaders. Like, my friends and families are, like, I go to them and they're like, hey, that's a great idea. And to people actually who love me, everything is a great idea. But my haters are really where I can potentially get some data and find areas of improvement. And that's something I remember that's resonated with me for some time that I got.
I want to add something to the friends and family discount there. And I conditioned them by not listening and getting defensive.
Yeah.
Like, whenever friends and family tell me something, I condition them. If I'm not careful, I actually condition them.
Yep.
By
That's a
not
good
listening
point.
and getting defensive. I condition them
We
to
do.
only give me unconditional love. And there's this entitlement with being, genetically tethered together or ritualistically inclined to one another. That can just make me a worse leader for those that don't have to love me.
Yeah. Listen, this is why my dad thought every one of my ideas was great, because if he didn't think it was great, I'd be like, what do you know? And so it's, I get that. I see that in myself 100%.
I think
yeah.
No, I think as even as parents, some of us are parents, obviously, and you want to motivate and you want to champion. You don't want to break people's spirit. You want to keep wind in their sails. There's truth to what you guys are saying. I mean, I was raised that way too. My mother, oh my God, she's Italian. You could do anything you put your mind to. You could do anything and there may be some truth to that, but you have to take interest in things too. And of course, parents are going to push you that way. We do that at work. Why do we have sales rallies? Why do we have leadership conferences? I just got back from one. We do it to pump our people up, to fill them with positivity, to lift them up when they're feeling down. So there's a responsibility there too. But to your point, Andrew, when you're talking about the people that don't really give a rip about who you are, and it's easy for them just to judge from the perch, or from the bleachers. Yeah. But sometimes you have to decipher through that too, and read through those lines and go, wait, this actually, I don't really, I'm not going to listen to this because, this is not reasonable to me. I think most of us are pretty reasonable and we can decipher and sniff out, good feedback, whether good or bad, but and say, hey, this is something I can take to the bank with me. I need to think about this. But if I read Jay's chapter correctly, I think he was talking more about the trolling, the people that are out there that are just hating for the sake of hating and just fueling things for the sake of fueling things. I think that's the conversation you and I got into when we did our recap on this. Was you go out on the airwaves, right? And there are just, nowadays, I don't even know if it's AI anymore. I don't know what the hell it is, but, we all want good feedback. When I mean good feedback, I don't mean in a positive way. I mean, you want it to be, thoughtful, intelligent, feedback that you could use, not just, quick retorts or something just to throw throw some ignition into, just to spark something up to have people, start down another path. And so for me, to all this, I was just going to say, if I may, it's also a balancing act too. You have to bring balance into your life. You can't just be one way. I think we're all an amalgam of different things. And, certain things will rise to the top that kind of define who we are. We're this kind of person. We're really driven. I know that, Jay, for example, you bring up Brad. You brought him up a few times, and I've listened to Brad dropping bombs and doing what he does. And I listened to the podcast that you guys did together. And, I tried to do a good job of just listening, be a good listener. Brad's personality is a little bit different than your personality. And, I could, I don't know that dropping bombs, for example, defines who Brad Lee is. I think there's more. I think that's just one facet to his personality, to who he is, to what he enjoys doing. But I could also tell he's a really deep thinker.
Oh, yeah.
I could tell he's compassionate. I can tell he loves you. See, I can tell that just by watching the podcast. You with me?
Yeah.
So that's listening to what is unsaid.
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know how I got on that stupid ass tangent, but whatever.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Stupid
an
at all.
important. Well,
So
that's an important piece
accurate,
because, or Andrew, go ahead.
insightful. No, just saying, not stupid, accurate, insightful. You know, not
The
tangent.
balancing piece is extremely helpful, I think, for in general and the audience, because
Yeah.
At either extreme, we're looking at on one extreme. So I wrote this down. My capacity for love is proportional to my counterpart's actions of hate. So at one extreme, that's Christ's crucifixion, even if it's a metaphor. You're going to fight in the street. You're going to choose love. If they have a knife, you're done. You didn't make the sale. Your smile and your open heart led to an open heart wound. They decided that you didn't, because there's ramifications for maybe self-defense. Like it could be 30 years of therapy. Who knows what it could be, but or some type. So there will be consequences for our actions in this world. So at one extreme, it's like I want to say that quote. My capacity for love is proportional to my counterpart's actions of hate. On the other extreme, we have, I'll use a practical business example. When the chief executive officer stops listening, it clogs the arteries and cancer develops. So trust is how human beings tell the truth and solve problems.
100%.
That's good.
So at the same time, that executive role lives in paradox. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So my proclivity towards that, my capacity for love is proportional to my counterpart's actions of hate. That I am an accountability mechanism to that position of ultimate authority, influence, power, and responsibility. So, and even that podcast that you're referring to, 703, is a great example of that. Of me working, essentially, working in with people in those positions of power, influence, authority, and responsibility, and the burdens that come with, what is true, what isn't true, who do I listen to, who do I not, how do I conserve energy and make decisions that ultimately only I can make because I'm in that seat. Do I trust my executives? Are they telling me the truth? Is it because we're all fighting with our own agendas, whether we realize it or not? And so, wow, there's so much there, but I love that you brought that up. That led to all that. And there's another thing that I want to throw into the hat here, and then I'll be sensitive of time. But I wrote this down. How am I going to hate them? So this would be like the critics. I don't even like me. You know, like
uh,
or
it's
like
great.
I hate that Jay too. We could both bond. Like I could my
Yeah.
whole business partner, I could bond with him because I didn't like that Jay either. Let's look past all that. We could at least meet at level ground.
Yeah.
That, you know. So I've always thought about that. I don't like because I'm trying to move upward. Nietzsche said the tree that grows to heaven's roots go all the way down to hell.
I believe that. You need both. You need both. I mean, and by the way, just on a side note, because I got your the message you sent me, I love Lex Friedman. By the way, that guy, he's like you. He makes me think of you because he's
Thanks.
young and he's inquisitive. He's bright. Man, everybody's been on his show, but and I listen to him and Jordan Peterson and all kinds of people that I follow are on. Lex is interviewed.
We got to get Lex on the show. We have to. That's a goal. He's definitely a hero as far as what he's accomplished.
Have you ever seen him interview Annika Harris, Sam Harris's wife?
No, I have to write that down. Thanks
Oh
for the
my goodness.
recommendation.
She's as cute as a button. She's really smart. She wrote a really good book. I have the book at my house. I just again I got to crack into it and start reading things. I was gonna say something that you made me think of when I was kind of defining you. I did a review on you on 30 Days of Thought, but it was more general. And I remember I did it at PRMG, and one of the analogies was I said you're like a freight train that once you get going you're unstoppable, that you're very powerful, and I still believe you to be that guy. I mean, I know I see the change in you a little bit, but you're like that. That's where you and Brad maybe both have that commonality. You guys both can be, you could be locomotives, and locomotives are really powerful. They can move at a pretty good clip, but good luck trying to stop them. So, there's something about you that has that quality that I actually admire in you. You're not afraid to bulldoze through when you need to. Um,
Thanks.
no, I mean that. And going back to your thing about leadership, I see your clips that come through all the time. The one you just were referring to, I felt like you made a clip on that. I feel like I just watched that
Mm.
a couple weeks ago or whatever. But I agree, when leadership basically falls out of alignment, when leadership, you guys remember we did a piece called Cultural Blog. Does anybody remember that one?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Where you
I
have to be
remember.
in alignment. You have to be in alignment with your leadership. Leadership's the sun. We're all like little planets orbiting the sun, but we have people orbiting around us. So, you kind of pull and draw from the main source, and then it all spills over to everybody else. When that's out of alignment, let me tell you something. It's very palpable, and it starts to get you to question things. You start to wonder, well, what changed? Am I still valuable? You know, or are they listening? Or does somebody else have their ear? Those things happen the closer you grow into an organization. The closer you get to the sun, it gets really hot.
Wow, that's great. It's really hot. That's profound.
Yeah. And I mean that in many different ways. So you got to just kind of think about that too. I'm speaking kind of for myself because I've been with this company going into 15 years in March.
Wow.
That's a long time. I can't even
Congrats.
believe that. But whatever. It's not about, I don't want to get on a tangent. I'm just talking about, to your point, how important, how imperative, how powerful it is that a leader actually has. They have a huge responsibility. They need to lead by example. I really believe that. If you could lead by example, that's the way to go. Versus dictating what needs to be done. I think you need to have a little bit of both. But anyway.
I agree with that deeply. It's I've been thinking about this a lot, like when it comes to especially founders, don't start where you're not willing to finish.
Oh, good way to, I love
And
that.
the finishing is the example piece because in our culture today, with the proliferation of private investment and online addiction and all these distractions, there's just this, it's like the rising tide. The rising tide also sinks all ships.
It
And so the
sure is.
rising
It
tide of our
sure is, man.
culture is scary. And that's where I would challenge the audience. I mean, the when it comes to this meditation, I call it my meditation, 30 days of thought. It's about self-awareness and clear thinking so that I want to be a successful business person and a person, a person. And so going through the 30 days of thought is a meditation, a way to think, what do I think?
Mhm.
Where am I going? Why? And like that, I think that behavior of, that process, or however one that's listening does that in their own way outside of 30 days of thought, is, I think, it creates a strategic advantage for a life, or whether a company, a life. And right, in the business culture, I think a rising tide can sink all ships too. And it's leading by example is that's where the values become, that's the value of values.
Yeah, no, it's well said. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, my boss, I call my boss, our leader always says, and he's a boater too. He loves, he has beautiful yachts, whatever. He always says, yeah, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? Yeah, but I like, your line, yeah, it could work both ways. It's back to the roots to hell to grow to heaven, man. It's
Hmm.
both. I mean, I don't know. To me, you brought up something in what you were saying. I was listening in about self-awareness. Do you think, do you think most people have relatively good self-awareness?
Oh,
I
go
don't
ahead.
think it's finite. I think it's a paradox, and I think it's on a spectrum. And I
Yeah.
think I mean, if we had, and then it goes down to like, uh, we have, um, we have intimate relationships with a partner,
Yeah.
on a very deep level.
Yes.
That is an accountability feedback loop. Like if I was, if so, no, the answer is no. And I
Yeah. I
actually,
was.
to keep it simpler for like practicality of business and everything, I actually think growth and self-awareness have an inverse relationship.
Okay.
Growth and self-awareness.
Because where I was going with that, you remember the old the old fable, whatever, the emperor has no clothes.
I did one of my favorite talks of ever was at NAREP years ago,
Yeah.
and I told that story. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Me too. Because it's kind of it is about being self-aware, right? Obviously, there are people that just do what they're doing, and everybody kind of turns a blind eye, right? Out of fear, not nobody wants to confront, nobody wants to point out, and that's not a good place to be. That is not a good place to be. It takes a lot of guts to step up and go, you know what? This ain't right. Something's
And
wrong
what
here.
maybe the reason they say it takes guts is because if one does that, there's a likelihood that their guts will be on the ground.
Well, of course.
I just
Yeah.
thought of that, right? I mean, I don't know where
Well,
that comes from. It takes a lot of guts. Like I envision, casualties. Because like I go to work every day and I have to remind myself my goal is to get fired. Because if I'm not getting fired, I'm contradicting the very value of being an accountability mechanism to an organization, because there's a different dynamic between being in an organization and a part of its flow,
yes.
and outside as a servant too.
Yeah.
So like I truly have to, and it's not an either or, like one is better than the other. It's a symbiotic
Yeah. The working for or
relation.
working in, working for the business or working in the business, it kind of made me think of that. But what you're really saying is you don't want to become complacent, is what I'm hearing you say. complacent to the business. In other words,
succumb to the, and this all goes back to life lesson. I mean, I think that they're connected. My ability to speak truth in my life
Mhm.
has a relationship with my ability to listen to those that I could easily label as the hater and the critic. Because who I become, how I'm tested in my values and my ability to regulate emotion, they're tied together. I'm actually believe they're tied together. How I'm able to comport myself, confront negative comments in the content. I'll give you an example. Somebody that just blocks all the comments on their Facebook that they don't agree with. What? They're going to have an epiphany tomorrow and they're going to just start listening to their coworkers?
Right. Yeah.
Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah.
I think they're connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the
That's good.
narcissism and entitlement in our culture is
Oh
growing
my
by the
God.
second. Yeah. So
You bring up, you bring that. That's, Andrew,
that's what I'm trying to chew on. And as an imperfect,
Eh,
I've gotten uninvited from too many dinner parties. I'd like to.
Really? No, come on. Come on. Hey,
Oh,
Andrew.
it's half true. It's half true.
I know. No, this
That's what trauma does. It changes your, yeah. You fixate on that one occurrence or
you
whatever.
got to bring some levity, man, into this.
What would you guys say is like, if you were to, for the audience's sake, that would like to do something, that isn't maybe they're. I tend to think that everybody listens to the Culture Matters podcast is cerebral. Like, I think people are a lot more philosophical than they may think they are or know they are. And it shows in the, like, people listen to the show. So to respect them as far as like practical, what is life lesson about in your guys' estimation, and how can this be helpful to our audience?
So, I mean, it's about understanding that, first off, in many cases, as a leader of an organization, as a leader of a community, leader of a department, whatever you are leading that's gotten to your level of success, that is potentially going to attract negative Nancy's, negative comments, has also come with a level of filter to know actually when to take some advice, when to take some guidance, and when to just maybe take it with a grain of salt. And it's actually constantly reevaluating that filter is what self-awareness is. And I'd say and I don't think that I for most of my life I understood what self-awareness was. And I just felt like, listen, you just focus on winning, and maybe you make a couple of enemies along the way, but you kind of just keep your eye on the prize. But I think actually most of my life I probably missed a lot of data points and things that could have improved if I was a little more self-aware. And that's my it's a little bit of what I get from this the life lessons. Which, and by the way, what's interesting, I read this, I went back, I read this, wrote my notes, and I looked at my notes that I wrote the first time I read this, and actually I was surprised they were pretty much in sync.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of these other things, some of these other topics, I've gone back and there's definitely been some change, but this is one, like, my notes that I wrote last night were very similar to what was I originally wrote in the book, and somewhat similar to what we did actually in our recording.
That's cool. Yeah, you bring up a really good point, Andrew. I don't know, Jay. I don't have any profound words. There was you guys remember the old cartoon Pinocchio? Jiminy Cricket said, "Well, you can't please everybody," and I think, and I think there's some truth to that. I just had to deal with something very recently. It's on my brain. It's been on my brain all week, and we just had a really, really very positively charged leadership conference. And so we were walking away feeling pretty good. There were some accolades and some high fives and attaboys, and thank you very much for the great work you all did. So leadership really gave it up for us. And inside of 10 minutes, it all went to hell. Not the leadership conference, but just other aspects of the business that we deal with on a daily basis that, if you turn and you don't pay attention, could get sideways on you. And in that very moment, a really good thing, doesn't feel so good anymore because now you're dealing with something over here, right? And that's just going to happen in life. That's life. It ebbs and flows like business, right? You're going to have that. And so for me, I guess at the end of the day, what it is you have to take the good with the bad, and you got to learn from both of them. Okay, there's something to be gotten from the good as well as the bad, if you want to call it the negative. And just be, like I said, just be more receptive to learning and growing from it, and that helps shape who you are over time. You can't turn all the bad comments off because you don't want you don't want to reveal something, any weaknesses. I think, revealing weaknesses is actually a good thing. It'll help you grow, helps you find solutions, helps change the trajectory. Maybe it needs to be changed. Who knows? You can't just go, I get it, go for the prize at all costs. Okay, all right, what are the costs? Are you okay with severing relationships? Are you okay with, I don't give a rat's rear end what anybody says. I'm doing this. You have to weigh all that in. I mean, those are things you got to take, you got to think about. But I think circling back to your comment about people listening to Culture Matters podcast, I do think those people are going to be more like the people that like to listen to Lex Friedman. Those are the people that like to listen to, Jordan Peterson. And there are others. That's a certain group. That's a certain type. That's a certain interest, right? But I think what you're doing, Jay, with the Culture Matters podcast, and I think what you're doing with the idea of, espousing how important culture is, I think is meaningful. I want you to know that since I met you, I've pushed, that's probably one of the strongest things I push. That was a trajectory change for me. I thought, this makes sense. This is a good thing. If we do something good inside, it'll impact what we do outside. But it's got to start within. And so I've been a big proponent, champion of that. And I owe a lot of credit to you for that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to learn, because I'm learning right back at you. It's the gift of teaching, is to be the student forever. I wrote this down. The soul is tested, fortified, and built by conflict. I don't know why. Yeah, but I wrote that. That came to mind. The soul is tested, fortified, and built by conflict. I hope as we go through this book, we might come to the point where we actually dislike each other because of how deep the assumptions go that we'll have to unmask. I think it was Nietzsche said something to the effect of, we need to be able to love our enemies and hate our friends. So
Wow.
in the spirit of
Wow.
that, I challenge
Wow.
our audience to follow along with us as we traverse this book. There's roughly 120, because I went through, I'm doing this solo, as when I don't procrastinate and get scared by the excerpts. But I'm doing it solo. There's about 120 talking points in 30 Days of Thought when you accumulate like the excerpts, and there's also values in the back of the book. There's different dedications we can talk about. There's about 120 content points that we can go through in time. And one of the things that I believe has happened for me as a byproduct of following along in this process, I've started introducing guests to one another in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I plan on bringing some of the different guests that have the book or have interest, into these episodes with us and introducing you guys, and maybe we'll get some different haters in this journey as we go through. I don't know how many people we could get on a call like this without it being absolute mayhem, but I hope the audience can tune in and participate and have some fun with us as we traverse their 30 days of thought. And yeah, this was awesome. We didn't even we I'm happy that I hit record earlier, because I wouldn't have done that a year
Oh,
ago.
yeah.
And we may have had like an hour of conversation and run out of time before we hit record if we didn't
Yeah.
start. As Don
Yeah.
Hennig would say, start stupid. That just came to one of our guests that Andrew introduced to us. Start stupid. Yeah.
That's that well said, brother. Yeah, it's interesting where conversation could lead. That's the beautiful thing about conversation, right? It just kind of starts. It kind of starts a journey of its own, a path of its own. Yeah, I'm going to. I think what I'm going to do, maybe Andrew, if you guys and we both, all three of us want to do it, it would be fun to go back and start picking different excerpts again, and reread them. There's a few that I have not read, Jay. So, you know, that's something.
Wow, I thought you were supportive.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's a few. I mean, like I said, there's a few of them here that I have not hit, but because what we were doing is Andrew and I were doing it together. That's why. And then life, there are other things that pop into play. Um, Yeah, brother, I really enjoyed this a lot. This was fun for me. It's cathartic. It really is. It's a good way to kind of get the juices flowing again and getting us to start thinking about, other things. That's what I love about the book. It was outside of what we really do. It might impact what we do, but it's outside of that sphere. For me, I can only talk about the mortgage industry so much, right? That's the world I kind of live in. Um, but this to me is more high level thinking, and it's a little more. It allows your mind to expand a little bit. And I don't know if Andrew would agree with me, but that's how I feel about it.
Yep, 100%. It allows. I mean, listen, 90% of the time, I'm on camera. It's talking something about the mortgage business, and the mortgage business obviously consumes like 90% of my like non-family time, personal development time. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But obviously we are more than just our careers. We are more than just our work focus. We are more than our family, I guess. Like as a being, as we are our world. We are um we create our own universe. And going back to the what you we start off with, it limits, I forget exactly what it was, but something about most people view the limits of their vision as the limits of the world. It's kind of, I feel like it comes back to that.
You are the director of your movie, man.
Yeah, you said the quote perfectly. And on that note, I challenge our listeners to pick up, invest in their copy, go through, write their thoughts down, uh, and film a video and put it out, or at least watch yourself, or at least think about the thoughts that arise when you think about watching yourself, and something interesting will occur. We don't know what it is, but 30 days of thought is your journey, your process. And if that's a bit too anxiety creating, well, follow along with us for a couple episodes, listen to some other shows. We've got 3 episodes going out every day now, and we're ready to be. I'm excited for our next one. So let's figure that out. And if you're listening to this podcast, go listen. Actually, this is my call to action to episode 10. Get comfortable getting uncomfortable. season 1, Paul Lucido, and season 5, episode 55, Andrew Berman's first appearance as we go into episode 1000, season 90, whatever.
Wow.
And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. We'll see you.